sa tanan, welcome to the MAKABATA series, a digital platform dedicated to championing child rights, protecting the vulnerable, and turning shared knowledge into powerful and systemic action. I am Zaya B. Sombol from the Department of Justice, Interagency Council Against Trafficking Region 7. We are streaming on the 𝐒𝐄𝐑𝐈𝐒𝐄𝐒 Facebook page. And I am absolutely thrilled to welcome our media practitioners, journalists, content creators, student communicators, and child rights advocates tuning in from all over the country. Before we dive into today's core discussion, let's take a quick step back. In episode 2, we deep dive into a critical framework that serves as our shield and compass, the 𝐾N+D protocol. 𝐾N+D stands for child abuse, neglect, and exploitation plus discrimination. We learned how crucial it is for responders, local authorities, and yes, even us in the media, to recognize the nuances of abuse and discrimination. We talk about the strict handling of sensitive information, ensuring that in our effort to document reality, we do not inadvertently re-traumatize the victims or expose them to further vulnerability. If you missed the episode, the recorded stream is still available on our official pages, and I highly encourage you to check it out because today's topic directly builds on those foundational ethical principles. Today's episode is incredibly vital. It's titled Beyond the Headline, Guide for Media Practitioners on the Reporting and Coverage of Children. As storytellers and news bearers, the power we hold in shaping public perception is immense. But when it comes to children, that power must be wielded with the highest level of caution, empathy, and ethical responsibility. Today, we'll look past the sensationalism, past the race for clicks, and focus on what truly matters: protecting the dignity and rights of the child. To help us navigate the fine line between the public's right to know and child's right to protection, we are joined today by our two council members of the 𝐒𝐄𝐑𝐈𝐒𝐄𝐒. First, to give us the solid legal grounding and rights-based perspective, please welcome our speaker from the Children's Legal Bureau, Attorney Noemi Troya Abarrientos. Hello, Attorney.
Good day, good morning everyone. Good morning, Zia.
Yes,
and
Attorney.
to our viewers right now, everywhere in the world, probably, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Okay. Second, from one of our media partners from DYMR Radio Pilipinas Cebu, Miss Jessa Agua Ilanan.
Hi,
Hello,
Lucy.
ma'am.
Hi, Attorney. Good morning, everyone, and good day. Good evening, as mentioned by Attorney, to our viewers and everyone joining us online. It's a privilege to join you here.
Thank you so much to our source person for being with us today. Now we will hear from Attorney Noemi Troya on the salient points of the Guide for Media Practitioners on the Reporting and Coverage of Children.
Yes, thank you, Zia, and it's actually a privilege to be presenting this one. This is a guide for media practitioners on the reporting and coverage of children. It will be shown on screen in a little while, no?
Yes.
And don't worry, you will also be given copies of this if you just request. This is also available online if you want to check. Now, what's the guide? A media guide for practitioners all about. So this is a material given by the DSWD, particularly the Council for the Welfare of Children, believing that public information contributes to shaping perceptions and behaviors of adults, especially toward children. So as such, interventions directed towards helping the media report on children fairly and produce content that promotes the rights of children can potentially create positive changes in public perception and behavior. So with this in mind, this revised guideline aims to help shape the best interest of the child principle as applied to media practice. Now, what is the best interest of the child? This is a concept found in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, but it is not defined there. It is defined by one of our laws, that is Republic Act 9344. In that law, the best interest of the child is defined as the totality of the circumstances and conditions which are most congenial to the survival, protection, and feelings of security of the child, and most encouraging to the child's physical, psychological, and emotional development. So it's actually a comprehensive understanding of what is best for the child. Now, with this guide, we also hope to assist media practitioners and social media content creators move beyond using their moral compass towards having clear guidance as they navigate between the exercise of press freedom and deciding on the child's welfare. The guide actually has its roots way back 2000, when there was really a need to provide guidance to the media on handling cases involving children. So around 26 years ago, the Committee for the Special Protection of Children, which was chaired by the Department of Justice, led the development of the previous guide in the media reporting and coverage of cases on children. And then this was updated in 2008. You will see this in various protocols also provided. But then the legal landscape had since evolved. A lot of laws had already been passed for the protection of children. There are emerging issues. There are different types of abuses, violence against children that we need to have somehow a guide for media on really how to handle this. So last 2 years ago, the Council for the Welfare of Children initiated the crafting of the revised guideline, a series of consultations among media partners, children, various government agencies, also non-governmental organizations. Children also were consulted on this, and after the crafting, this was also validated among the different partners, NGOs, government agencies, children, and then to validate it again and really ensure that this can really guide media. So there were a series of presentations, and again, feedback gathering from stakeholders if these guidelines keep up with the times. So probably you'll see in your screen the different agencies contributing to the guidelines, no? Now, what is the coverage of the guidelines? Because the title says media practitioners, but who are the media practitioners as covered under these guidelines? Now, we are aware that there are a lot of platforms now, social media, etc., and are they covered by this? So under these guidelines, both traditional media platforms like print, radio, and television are covered, but the new media platforms are not exempt. Social media, websites, blogs are also covered. So vloggers, bloggers, and those who create contents for social media are covered by these guidelines. So tanan essentially are covered: media practitioners, content creators, social media personalities, even actors and actresses making features about children, stories, even TikTok produced contents, yes, are also covered. Who are the children covered? Essentially everyone, as defined under RA 7610. So that would be anyone below 18 years of age or 18 years and above but unable to protect themselves from abuse, neglect, cruelty, exploitation are also covered. So katong mga we consider mentally challenged, no, could be covered under this. Now, it also covers children in need of special protection. Ang mga CNSPs, we will define who these are because there's a special guidelines for these kinds of children. So kani siya nga guideline na siya structure actually so that dali ra siya basahon, dali ra siya maka-guide as well as it will sort of kanang makapa-reflect, no, sa media kay dili man nimo madiktar unsay gihuna-huna and how to do things, especially in the media, no, it's you're bordering on freedom of expression and it's kuan gyud na siya to share gyud na siya nga topic, no, you don't want to kanang create guidelines nga mo suppress, repress, etc. the expression kay it's very broad. So kani siya nga guidelines murag muhatag lang ka og giya but it's really up to the media on how to reflect on this, no, wala magadi ni siya penalties actually. Guide ra gyud siya. So there's part 1 ang 5 principles of child's rights based media practice, which is based on the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. These principles are supposed to be the cornerstone of for media reporting. And then part 2, which is integrated in the part 1, it gives practical tips and considerations for media practitioners based on the principles, katong 5 principles. And the part 3 are the additional recommendations when writing, reporting on or featuring children in need of special protection. So naani siya towards the end. Nasa mga specifics for this, kanang mga absolutes, dili gud pwede i-cover, dili gud pwede istoryahan, dili gud pwede, no, so na mga absolutes dire. Now, what are these 5 key principles? Why are we discussing this? Kay as we say, wa man ta mo diktar unsa, kita na lang huna-huna sa prinsipyo, like number 1. Actually ako ning gimuan og murag acronym ba? Papadigs. Sorry bitaw. Kung tanaw niyo, privacy ang first, no. We want to uphold the children's rights to privacy. Next is respect for the child's agency. Kung saan ni siya, ako po ni pakita. Ato na i-discuss alongside the tips, no, and some reflections, some questions we can ask ourselves. Giapil na ko akong kaugalingon do technically kanang dili ko media practitioner but we do vlogging, we do produce content, no, especially ang CLB children gyud na mo ang kono, we do stories. So akong feeling appeal pod mi ani and everyone else nga mo kanang create og stories about children. We encourage meaningful participation, so that's PAP na, no. And then dignified treatment. We must ensure dignified treatment of children as well as handling children with sensitivity. So 5 ka basic principles, again, privacy, agency, participation, dignified treatment, and sensitivity. Now, what are these in relation to siguro the tips that we can give? Ang privacy, of course, no need of further kind of explanation, but there's actually a case nga taga Cebu nga case. Remember the STC case, Vivares versus St. Teresa's College, no, 2014 ni siya nga kanang decision by the Supreme Court. It defines privacy, which refers to the right against undesirable, unwanted, unwarranted, and unlawful intrusions committed by any person into the life, liberty, or security of the child. Now, there's the need to uphold the privacy of children, which means to prevent harm. We want to prevent stigma and exploitation or any threat of these, which may result from their public exposure or presentation. So, pinaka-first na to, no? So, we ask ourselves, diri sa iyahang mga practical tips, no? Should you make the story in the first place? So, and when you do, you avoid identifying details, may mga practical tips, limit specifics, collect information responsibly, keep data safe, no? Dili kinahanglan tanan data himo ipakita. Be careful, especially when live streaming kay like sa unang kaya pa ipang-edit, no, ma-record, etc. Karon kay with social media, live news coverage, unsa una nimong edit ng now ning gawas na, no? So, what are self-assessment questions on this matter? Number 1, you ask yourself, were sufficient steps taken to anonymize the child's identity or hide their personal or identifiable information? Dili tuod ipakita ang now, di sulting pangan, pero gi-interview ang mama, gi-interview ang igsuon, gisulti asa nga eskwelahan. Wala, useless ang pag-anonymize when the facts and circumstances would point to the same person, the child, diba? So you ask yourself that, kanang sincere ba sa pag-anonymize? And then, is all the information being collected relevant to the story and necessary for public interest? Basig nag-sensationalize lang, no? Ganahan lang ka nga kanang for the clicks. And then have safety measures to avoid unintentionally revealing sensitive details about the child being implemented, no? Virtually gi-describe na ang tanan. So no safety measures. Kani for self-reflection ra gyud ni sa media when you do the story. Is all the information I have collected relevant to my story and necessary for public interest? Have I implemented safety measures to avoid unintentionally revealing sensitive details about the child? So, kuha na ni siya reflection on the part of the one making the story, no? The reporter, the vlogger, no? Especially the vloggers, and sometimes especially if the parents making features or stories about their own children, no? And some of these parents probably driven by lang kanang the desire to help their own children, unya posting stories nga actually detrimental, no? Nya of course so mo hide sa identity mo, ingon man ang parent nga ako man ang kabubuton. How will you regulate things like that, no? Lisod kayo ang pangutana. Next, we go to agency, okay? Privacy and agency. What's ning agency? Is actually the right to choose their own thoughts, kanang capacity of the child to decide for himself or herself, na siya iyang kaugalingong thoughts, na siya iyang kaugalingong opinions, na siya iyang kaugalingong belief system, which is still respected under the UNCRC. So promoting the agency of children in media practice means ensuring that children's participation in media reporting comes with the acknowledgement that they have the right to provide their assent separately from their parents or guardians. Kasi sila gyud imong pangutan-on, no? Kay gawa sa parent na may puy kabuot ang bata if developmentally appropriate po, no? Okay, of course, ay lang po may philosophy mo ingon nga kana daing 2 years old imo pangutan, definitely wala jud na, no? Pero at certain ages pwede na nimo sila pangutan-on na on the things that they can probably give consent to, provided that they understand it. So unsa ang practical tips for kanang things when you want to reflect on kanang you want to respect the agency of the child? Give enough time for the child to be prepared, no? Diha ambush pa gyud, no? Ambush interview. Get the consent as well as the assent. Kanadjong kay balog yun siya, tando yun siya, kay balog yun siya unsay iyahang kanang gipasabot nga gitanduan. Allow the child to opt out. Kani we always ask, even sa mo ang interviews as lawyers, no, kanang if dili nakaganahan sa interview, pwede ra ka moingog no more ha. Oh, stop na ha. Oh, do we do that to our interviewees nga mga bata, even the parents, no? Ensure adult supervision asa ang ginikanan pag interview, or well informed pud ba ang ginikanan. Consider media exposure only if necessary. So kani judgment call yun sa taga media yun, no? Kanang you do not say ingon magud siya, okay ra magud siya, no? Ikaw on your part as the media, is it necessary to expose the child to with the kind of story that you are giving? So you ask these self-assessment questions. Does the child feel that they are in a safe and enabling environment where they are free to express themselves without prejudice, no? So ang environment and situation niya matters. When the child makes a decision for themselves, does said decision endanger the child's other rights, such as the right to self-determination, privacy, and safety? So, while kanang atong gi-recognize ang right of the child nga mutando or dili, ato i-ensure nga kasabot gid sa iyang gatanduan kay base og ning tando pero wa siya kay bawo sa implications ana sa iyang safety. I usually give example for kanang mga trafficking victims ng mga bata, no, and the information that they may be giving you wa sila kahibalo nga it will endanger them, their location, their situation. You keep on asking them, not thinking nga kaning imong gipangayo nga mga information could really endanger them, and they don't know that. And can you say nga muana ra ka nga yung tabag ng po siya kuan ganahan mo kay siya mo tubag kay, of course sometimes kung sila kay bawo sa impact ug implication, ikaw as adult ikay hunahunaan na, no, sa unsay impact and implication sa imong ginauna. Same with us lawyers, no, we also think about that when we get informations from our interviewees nga mga bata, no, so kay impact aning ako ning gikulit-kulit upang mutana, no, sa iya. Sometimes they don't know that, not even the parents. Does the child feel free to express their individuality and capability to make sound decisions? Are the consent and assent clear and unequivocal? Siguro lang siya kasabot sa iyang gitando-tanduan, no? So mas dako nga responsibility on the part of the media practitioner or the vlogger, no? Dapat muhatag dako nga responsibility aning mo create og content kay grabe ang influence sa social media, no, nya feeling nila wa sila responsibility to be responsible in their content. Does the consent and assent clearly cover participation in the media interaction, disclosure of the identity and personal information, and eventual publication of the media consent? So mga points for reflection when we want to consider the agency of the child. Now, participation. Kanang ang mga bata, we acknowledge, no, that they have limited potentials. They can actually participate in so many things, and we want them to participate. So it celebrates the children as bona fide members of the society and acknowledges that while they may lack the experience, they have unlimited potentials. Promoting child participation in media provides children with opportunities to tell their own stories and make their opinions count, which contributes to their development and widens their perspectives, no? Kami conscious mi ani because we also have children nga among interviewon for our kanang kuan among Facebook sites, among websites, no, and we really like for them to express, no, kanang mo participate gyud sila, and sometimes mas effective pud nga messenger ang mga kanang batanon if your target sa imuhang kanang messaging are also young people, no, kay kapoy man yung mga gores mag-lecture sa mga young ones pero mas effective, no, especially mga awareness raising. That's kind of acknowledging their potentials. Now, tips. We must respect, no? We must listen to children's voices, but conduct risk assessment also in our capacities as adults sa ilahang capabilities, create safe, empowering space, seek expert opinion, and build trust with children. Okay. Kaning participation actually ko ani nga discussion sa una controversial discussion, should we really allow children to participate, mga bata pa man na. But apparently we have to acknowledge kay practicing man na sila nga human beings and they'll become responsible citizens, adults later on. Yeah, of course asa man day magsugod ari mis pagkabata, but they really need guidance. Now is some of the things that we want to consider when making these stories. comprehensive ba ang story nga gihimo? Not comprehensive probably nga kinahanglan tanan yung story comprehensive, but the context of what you're making, no, of the story that you are creating, the content that you're creating, maka-capture ba or dili ba siya misleading, misinformation. Will publishing the content in whatever format it may be help uplift the status of children? Nangayo na gyud ni responsibility on the parts of the adults. Is the story about poverty or any other condition of marginalization? Create an empowering, safe space. Ensure that it ensure that the engagement with children is carried out with the appropriate level of sensitivity. So balik ta sa sensitivity. And then in the participation of the child, although with their assent and consent from their parents or guardians, potentially harmful or dangerous. Kani kay some of the media practitioners I observe, labi na tong mga salawayon ang practice sa mga interview, ang ilang mga ipasangil is ganahan man ang mama, ganahan kayo mutubag ang bata, murag mo gyud na kasi and we just want to help, no? Ningon na gyud siya, harmful ba or dangerous ba ng imuhang pag-involve sa bata sa imuhang story? Which part of the interview secured with consent and assent should be published? No? Create a trusting environment with the child. There's an example of that, no, when the child said, iniingon nga dili i-post sa Facebook, i-post man lagi.
Yes.
Unsa day ka ang conversation nila nganong ning istorya ang bata kay ni reklamo man paghuman. No, wa ka realize. No? And then dignity na padung na ta sa sensitivity. So kani yung pag-respect sa dignity sa bata as a person, as a human being, the inherent worth and value, no, of every child. So presenting children in a dignified manner should be the primary consideration in all creative and editorial decision-making processes. Media practitioners to be mindful of risks associated with engaging children in interviews, as well as with the resulting public exposure and public backlash. So practical tips here: do not objectify children, no, making them sex objects. No, do not promote online sexual abuse and exploitation and child sexual abuse and exploitation material. Unsa ka ang probable nga example ani ka under sa balaod baya even kanang siguro pwede ina guys of interviewing unya graphic ang interview, no, with a child as to what the sexual activity was. Kung ato na ibutang sa definition sa balaod mo na siya, online sexual abuse and exploitation na kay di man kinilang pictures ang osaek, no, pwede man graphics, pwede words, pwede man gani libro, pwede man gani radio, no, nga kanang imong gi-project a sexual activity of a child, anything digital. Avoid demeaning images. Kani matter of good taste gyud ni sa kanang the one who is presenting the imagery. Be trauma informed ya, kani gyud kanang understanding the trauma, kanang the hurt, the pain unsay gi-undergo sa bata, and mo siguro ni kulang sa uban wala kasabot diha nga stage. Wala kasabot ani nga concept, no, kay nagtan-aw ko sa ubang mga comments sa kanang social media about mga report ba unya otro mo puding mga nang comment o kasabot, no. Ato mao na yung ganahan ta nga natay mga trainings on trauma informed care, which should include also media. Prevent stigma and harm. Actually the basic principle siguro is to do no harm, especially when you make story on a child. Kung dili ka ka-avoid og harm, kami mamana kanang the interview, each interview is relieving the abuse on the child. Kung imo nang gi-interview for rape, balik-balik nimo pangutana, it's making the person recall what happened, and every story, every pag-istoryaan na is relieving the abuse. Imagine nagkapila na interview, and that's why kami we advocate for joint interviews, multidisciplinary team nga maoy mo conduct, no? So whatever interview it is, whether pang kaso or any case sa bata, kay di ta ganahan nga magbalik-balik og istorya kay it's pain, wala ka nang samad nga balik-balikan ni mong ana, no? So it's stigmatizing, it's traumatizing, no? Mga bata, for example, we don't realize, but they are actually sensitive. Kanang mga rescued children, unya muha ni mong story, ning butonan, hibaw-an na silang tibok eskwelahan ng anak sila. Actually, they don't go back. They don't like to go back to their school.
Yes.
Kibaw na kuno tanan, oy, silang eskwelahan nga na-rescue sila. No? Meaning, naabuso sila. No? And they don't like that. No? They don't like that story. So, ang stigma associated niya, the stories that we are creating. Manang careful yung kaayo tas mga bata. Questions to ask when we want to assess ourselves sa story. Is the content likely to encourage discrimination or incite hatred? Is the child being placed in a compromising state? Is there a post-media exposure mechanism or activities such as debriefing and processing to ensure that the child's exposure to media has not violated any of their rights? Is the image safe to use, or can it possibly be used to harm the child directly or indirectly? Is the content supposedly addressing a social issue? Does it compel children to be presented in their dismal realities, so like any mga poverty porn, no, nga mga stories nga kanang what's the problem with poverty porn? You're making a story man good kay people will read it, pero kanang it's not empowering on the side of the people you're making a story of. Murag musamot og musamot og kalubog sa ilahang kaugalingong poverty, no? Kagana yung story. Kuan magud ta ka ng stories that empower magud unta ta, diba? Now, last principle is sensitivity. Now, this recognizes that more is required of the media in ensuring that some categories of children are able to exercise their rights equally, na capable. Some children are more privileged than the others, but there are children who are not. No? Sila lain-lain nga level, lain-lain nga practices, lain-lain nga experiences, lain-lain nga identities, lain-lain nga situations, and we must be sensitive insofar as understanding the different kinds of children is concerned. Di man nimo makuan one size fits all kind of interview sa mga lain-lain nga bata. Bisag kami, we temper our interview depende sa among sabot. That's why before interviewing the child, you do background check, no? If you have the time, and if you don't, be careful, very very careful, no? Practical tips: get expert opinion, mind your language, no? Be prepared and follow all protocols, build trust, practice empathy. Ibang pinangutan-anan gud nga ris bata nga walang ka-empathy, no? Kanang maura ba nay actually sensitive ang mga bata as to those. So, mo na ilaha makatunan. So you ask yourself, no? Ang mga self-assessment questions, will the content be harmful to a child or to another similarly situated child? Basig siya okay ra. Yung okay naman na siya kay kuan ning consent ning etc. Ni kibaw na grabe ni sila kasabot. But other children who are similarly situated, basin og dili kanang nay impact sa uban. That's where social responsibility comes in. So mo ni no, halag murag magkinto ang media when it comes to children, but we are thinking not only of this child, we're thinking of all the rest of the children. Are there potential triggers in the content to be produced? Is the child's role or involvement in the produced media or material age appropriate and gender responsive? Does the portrayal of the child perpetuate stereotypes or generalizations based on race, gender, socioeconomic status, or other factors? Have social workers child development experts, educators, or psychologists been consulted to ensure that the content is handled properly. Murag taas gini nga requirements sa mga sa media practitioners. Actually di kay ko gani inana kakuan sa kaning mga media practitioners kay kaya na to i-reach. Ang problema gid ang mga naa sa social media, and that means everyone else nga kanang gahimo og content, no, mo affect og children. Even the cute contents regarding children, I'm seeing those contents katong nay bata nga smart kaayo siya, nya sugo-sugon magyaw-yaw siya sa iyang mga magpapa kay sugo-sugon, wala ginana ang general theme na cute kaayo siya kay relatable man good. And pag naman ka at the back of my mind, actually dili ni siya exploitative sa bata, no, kay nag-produce man gud ka niya. Kumusta kang bata namin inanan? Anyway, wala may nireklamo. Now, we go to the children in need of special protection kay naay mga absolutes diri. So, I already defined children under RA 7610. Naatay EO number 79 series of 2024 which defines children in need of special protection. So, these are children who are vulnerable to or are victims of abuse, neglect, exploitation, cruelty, discrimination, violence, and other similar circumstances, including but not limited to child labor, SAEC, child trafficking, and other circumstances which gravely threaten or endanger the child's survival and normal development. So this will also include CICLs, children living in alternative care, children living with human immunodeficiency virus na HIV, no, children with HIV. So mga special good ni nga considerations when making stories about them. So unsay giingon diri, no, key considerations for specific groups like for 𝐒𝐄𝐒 victims. I hope na Gina na nato ang 𝐒𝐄𝐒. Mouthful man kung ako isulti tanan, but mauna na siya. Disclosure of their identity and personal information could lead to different negative outcomes such as long-term trauma, compromised active investigation, kasi ongoing pa, no, ang investigation, bullying, and other discrimination and unwanted attention. Moni ang na-experience sa uban namong mga clients, di na sila ganahan mamalik sa school kay mabuli lagi sila dito. When setting up interviews and other interactions, ensure that the interaction shall take place in a physically safe environment and that the child is provided with emotional support. So, ikaw na imagine, kita na imagine usa ka hay emotional support nga gikinahanglan sa batay na interview. Kung need niya nga naa sa iyang tugkaran, iyahang ginikanan, then probably that's the emotional support. Sometimes di sila ganahan na sila ilain nga support aside sa ilang parents. Di sila mo istorya actually kung na ilang parents.
Yes.
Probably another person, but there must be an emotional support. And then of course, coordinate with or direct actual concerns to the law enforcement agencies nga naghandle kung active ni nga mga actively investigated or active ni nga mga cases. Now, you also have CSAC, mga children in situations of armed conflict and children in emergencies. Absolutely, media engagement with these children is not allowed, and this is against their best interests. So, ability to provide assent may also be impeded or affected. So, in such cases, ensure that they're handled with utmost sensitivity. So, absolutely not allowed now. So, do not insist on interviews as only authorized officials are allowed access to them. And then, children in situations of armed conflict or child protection in emergencies, consult existing policies like RA 11188 mo ni ang children in situations of armed conflict nga balaod IRR, handling, etc. Nanay mga specifics dito. Pero, appeal na to sa mga absolutes actually. Dili pwede interview. Gibutang pamanggani diri nga rescued children in armed conflict shall not be used for any political propaganda nor be unnecessarily exposed to media. So, make extra precaution to prevent re-traumatization. And then napagilain children in marginalized situation like girl children, children in diverse OGSC, sexual orientation, gender identity expression, sexual characteristics, who are subjected to gender-based discrimination. So katong mga LGBTQ nga mga bata, as well as children with intersecting conditions of marginalization, such as ethnicity, disability, religion, socioeconomic condition, geographic isolation, among others, that require special interventions to be socially included. So, their individual rights must be respected, and any interactions with them should be supervised by authorized professional, particularly social worker. Maunang mananghin, makikistorya, dili pwede direktaon og istorya no kani nga mga bata. So when writing about or featuring children in shelters, always capture the interventions that are being provided to divert them from their situation. Actually kami when we interview, especially kanang we want to highlight kanang murag success stories. We don't dwell on what happened to them. No, we dwell on what happened to them after mura o kanang how they got out of it. That's why important for us to be able to explain to them what the interview is all about and what the story is all about, so that they can opt out if feel nila na may usahay nga mura success story na gani sila, but then they don't like the pressure of being the success story, kay the fear of mubalik sila sa karaan nga situation and mugawas sila nga failure highlighted pa, no? So grabe nga processing, no, when we do interviews with them. So pasensya bitaw sa mga taga-media kung medyo istriktuhon diring dapita kay naman ko siya long-term effect of implication.
Yes.
We might get the story. Sometimes I feel like I'm a journalist man. We might get a story, pero that's on our end. What about the children? Nga himuan na tong istorya. Managko pa na, managan pa nag-congressman, hinaot nga dili kurap, no? Hinaot nga dili abusado, no? And then kanang they can't get out kay everything on the internet, particularly kay mao naman internet naman taron, stays there forever. So mas double ato ang precaution when making these stories. Morning covered yun sa ato ang guidelines ang kanang everyone else on social media who are making stories for children. Now, ang Council for the Welfare of Children, when making these guidelines, actually kanang want to collaborate with different stakeholders. So kani there's a suggestion nga nga at least ma-integrate ni sa journalism, communication, and media ethics curricula sa mga communication students, no? Mga student-led content and research on child's rights and ethical reporting. Work in progress ni siya nga guidelines. So we do encourage nga ma-improve ni, and then mga forums, no, maistoryahan ni siya para ma-popularize, and siguro with the knowledge on this, probably ma-aware ang uban nga dili pa aware and who are continuing to be very insensitive in their stories, no? And kung pwede, no, dapat unta nga mabutang ni sa mga editorial policies, mga newsroom protocols. Ato ni pangutanon natong kuyo karon, how is it, no? Conduct regular in-house trainings, mga child-sensitive and trauma-informed reporting, and then institutionalization of the recognition of ethical reporting practices like awards. Siguro ato ning i-suggest iakat somehow, no, or sa CWC any Children's Month, right, no?
Yes.
And then guide on onboarding or orientation for new reporters and producers. Pag-appeal siya sa kaning guidelines kay mura magud siya moving forward from here, no, we know it's a work in progress, and we want everyone else who are involved, no, and we know we respect freedom of expression, but somehow kinahanglan siya mo balance sa katungod sa mga bata for a better future siguro and better stories about them in the future. So dili lang ni ko to bakong presentation, and there are a lot more discussions that we can have after
Yes.
this.
Okay. Thank you so much to Attorney Noynes for that presentation. And no, ganahan kay ko mahinumduman ang 5K principles, which are the privacy, agency, participation, dignified, and the sensitivity. No, katong first is the uphold children's right to privacy. Second, the respect the child's agency. Third, encourage meaningful participation. Four, ensure dignified treatment. And lastly, handle stories with sensitivity. So, we are now moving into our discussion. Let's jump right in. Okay. The baseline of any ethical guide on child reporting emphasizes the best interest of the child. From your experience in the field, how do you media practitioners typically balance the public's right to know with the duty to protect a child from trauma or social stigma?
Sa ako yun.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
This is a rather powerful first question, no? Because speaking on behalf of mainstream media, as I used to be part of mainstream media before joining the government media, now striking a balance really between upholding your mandate of being answerable to the people's right to know, and at the same time you have rights to protect, children's right to protect. It's very hard. It takes it takes a lot of dialogue because I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but in cases of media organizations, the reporters that go on field, they don't act alone. They usually follow assignments the night prior or early in the morning, or as news breaks, they will receive instructions from their editors, from their managers, to do this and do that and that. So in turn, the journalist or the reporter is left to decide if the questions raised by attorney earlier are actually met, or are they being balanced? Are the rights of the children being protected? So in many instances, reporters would labi na the newbie ones, kung suguon ka diretso ra gyud ka ana dito kay niingon man akong editor nga adtuon ako dito kay naay bata ditong giingana.
That's your assignment.
Yeah, because that's your assignment for the day, and you're on probation, so you have to do well, and you don't want to create an impression nga wa ka ni sunod sa gusto sa atong news organization. So really the challenge, especially for the new ones, is to pause and reflect and consider and refer to the guidelines. And earlier nindot tong recommendation that as early as in the academe pa, college pa ka, or basic education pa ka, if you're in media literacy, mas maayong kahibaw na daan kay for more experienced reporters, especially for those of us who have undergone training like ganing guidelines. This is not the first time that I'm hearing it, pero as I listen to attorney, notes gani ko, because there are still portions nga bitaw no wala kong kakakuan ani nga na ni nga na. So constant nga pag-remind sa imong self and sa inyong organization. So most organizations would have handbook, style book, handbook. Siguro nindot ni siya ma-incorporate. But striking a balance really is labi na ang timeliness na deadline, the print media to be exact, and the broadcast media, naman na sila cut off nga time nga masud ni nga news, and dapat ma-appeal ni sa lineup. So ang instruction really is however, whichever, whenever dapat makuha ni by this time. So mauna nga makita nimo nga nganong desperada man kay ning reportera nga mo anha din na, because the reporter and the media is working on a tight deadline. So mauna nga the challenge really is to strike a balance and to pause if it's really, do I have the courage to argue with my editor? because siguro with my personality, okay ra kay medyo gahi man ko. When I was still a newbie, I would really argue with my desk if moingon ang desk nga you cover this, and I'd say no, I can't because dili na ko kaya nga buhaton ni. I mean, fortunate for me kay medyo takot ko nga time. But there really are those who are in our field pero medyo dili kayo nga naka-assertive. They cannot assert. So it's very important nga from the kuan na pagsugod pa lang daan at the onset pa lang daan, there will be policies, internal policies in newsroom. But really, that's for mainstream media. For media producers and internet content producers, I'm not a content creator myself because redundant siya for me nga media na ko and then content creator ko. Then I mean no disrespect to those who are into that content. Yes, and at the same time in the media industry. But for me personally, I'd rather do something else for my spare time. I think kinahanglan sad nila nga kinahanglan nilang hunahunaon nga because if for content creation naamo gud sila tasks pod, not coming from an editor or desk editor, but it comes from the platform that you're working on or you're monetizing on. Nana sila yung mga task, kinahanglan mag-live ka, kinahanglan na kayong short form, long form, video and all. So siguro for me as a media producer, kaya di mo ko content creator, we should consider nga i-balance na to ang pag-meet sa atong tasks, and at the same time the guidelines we always refer to it and we take it by heart. If we cannot memorize every bullet, every RA, every EO, let's just put ourselves in the shoes of our subject or the parent of the subject. Kung ikaw ang ginikanan niya, malipay ka imong anak, ipa-recount sa traumatic experience, something like that. It's a very big challenge, and for me, kay moingon magud na nga a missed story, a missed viral and trending story is equivalent to a memo or a reprimand to some reporters. So really na jud siya invisible or I don't know, visible jud siya na clash nga kinahanglan gini mo siyang balansihon, and it all boils down to your core as a reporter, as a journalist, as a content creator. Will this make me a better person kung ako ni siyang i-carry on nga task, kung ako ni siyang i-interview? Will I create more broken people, soon to be adults, now children? Pero ingana ang imuhang dilemma, imong crisis, and you have to be answerable to yourself. Kay afterwards, bisan giingnan ka good job sa imong editor, giingnan ka good job sa imong mga followers, if you have recreated and resurfaced the traumatic feeling na the child is crushed again, imbis na giprocess na uta siya sa center, giprocess na uta siya sa mga experts, iyang family support, gibalik nimo siya sa uno. So is it worth the stars na imong nakuha? Is it worth the promotion nga imong nakuha sa imong newsroom, or the commendation that you got from your bosses? So murag medyo mo na ko bugat ka atong first question kay it's really that heavy, and you have to balance you have to meet the expectation and demands of your bosses as a media practitioner and as a content creator, but you also have to, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, will this make me a better person, and will this make a better community?
Actually, I agree with the kanang what you ask yourself, will this make me a better person? Especially if vlogger ka, kanang social media, kanang personality kanya, you create content, kay siguro kung naa ka sa kanang conventional media, traditional media, no, namo kay organization nga accountable to ka nga pwede mo remind nimo nga kanang mauni, or actually maoy dili mo remind nimo, but naagi kay someone to report to nga pwede po ni i-blame nga sila good na, but then but kani yung naaka, you are a content creator, and how do you really strike a balance nga niingon si Facebook nga kulang na kag inani ka content, no, para makakwarta ka, no, so kanang kwarta na ni, pero kanang will I be sacrificing this child, no, even if digital na siya nga content by the kanang digitalized child, kanang CGI nga bata, no, nya imong i-sexualize, kanang unsay impact ani sa ubang mga bata nga kanang ma-sexualize because you are sexualizing children sa imuhang content. Mao matong mo come in siguro imuhang kanang conscience, social conscience ba nga kanang what kind of reputation or what kind of image are you creating for children if you sexualize them nya. Question man na nga you ask yourself. So balance actually ni sa imuhang income generation, sa imuhang panginabuhi for example, and ang imuhang konsensya nga nag-ingon nimo eventually moapekta ni sa ubang mga bata, assuming nga dili tinuod nga bata, kay uban maingon man may tinuod nga bata nga naapektuhan ani, no. I'll go into that because naman koy uban daghan labi na with the age of AI, basig mas ubos-ubos natong konsensya ron kay maingon ta nga may tinuod nga bata, but actually your images that the images that you're creating are kanang sexualizing children. Apil ba yan sa punishable acts, by the way, if you sexualize children, even if dili sila tinuod nga mga bata na. So kanang questions that you ask yourself, will this make you a better person, or grabe jud lay panginhanglan sa kwarta, no? Murag same question sa misinformation, when you create wrong information kay daghang clicks, balik yun na sa imuhang value system. So eventually imuha ng moral call, no, kung unsa ka taas, so balik siguro ta sa kanang usay background nimo, imuhang kana imuhang moral judgment nimo ba nga anong mo okay lang kag ingon ana, no, or grabe lang ka desperado. Listen siya nga question, but eventually imuha na kanang asa ka nagikan o nganong mauna imuhang choices. So it will be a judgment against you, no? Di mangani judgment by the people against ikaw sa imuhang kaugalingon.
Yeah, mag-reflect ka sa imong kaugalingon, attorney, no?
Yes, no?
Itong same sa
taas kayo nga reflection. Daghan kayo nga reflection, especially karon.
Bukat kayo ang first question. Okay, thank you, attorney, and thank you, Miss Jessa. So, second question, the guide mandates strict rules against disclosing a child's identity, both directly and indirectly, such as pixelating faces, changing names, and withholding school details. In today's digital landscape, where a story can be cross-referenced across social media, how effective are our traditional identity blurring techniques, and where do we need to tighten our practices?
Siguro sa inyo. Pwede ko motubag ana, pero mo sunod sa ko, Jess.
Sige, na lang sa ka, ma'am.
Kuan siya, it's hard, especially if it's a dako na story. Say for instance, the Tacloban incident. I recently attended a seminar with KBP National, and then it tackled the ethics, and then one of the speakers asked, do you agree that the school was named?
Yeah.
Do you agree that the age of the victims and the suspect and the supposed perpetrators were revealed, even though the names were not divulged? But nakibaw na ta na San Jose National High School siya sa Tacloban, nakibaw ka nga diri ni siya nakuan, because if you go to the kining tan-awon nimo ang guidelines, tan-awon nimo ang policy, ang balaod, supposedly you do not give out clues, but what happened was Tacloban shooting na gani ang tawag. Sumura ang tanaw na nato. Ang tibok Tacloban mamusilay na ang dating.
Bugot na sila mga bata.
Tanang eskwelahan ni nga nanawan. In fact, it could be just, or it should be, it's just one school out of the many dito. And mag-instill na ka og fear, and then nananay mga other schools nga ni follow with threats, bisan unfounded threats. So di mo makita ang repercussion sa paghisgot lang by the mere giving out clues or the name or the proper name, circumstances of the situation, sensitive situation. But then again, mubalik na punta sa people's right to know, kay security man sad siya. So mura siya nagtuyok-tuyok gud siya nga storya nga lisod kay siya ipahunong because masumpay-sumpay siya nga mga storya. So I think it boils down to newsroom guidelines, kay if you're the reporter, kung ako, for example, kung ako lang sa akong self, di gid ako siya nganlan, di gid ako siya isuti. But if mag-editorial meeting na before the actual publishing or actual lineup is there, really wala magi choice ang reporter, because it's the editor's call, it's the management's call. So kanang sa ilahang end, siguro dinha sila mag-hunahuna if should we think about the ratings, the reading, the profit that we will be getting from kaning revealing these, or unsa kanang mo himotag alias maingon ta og a school in Eastern Visayas nga that broad na clue, pero that broad, pero mapildi man si mainstream media with the newsroom, with the editorial, with the management sa social media. So di na manggod siya mo ang and then ingnon pagid ka sa comment section, if you notice kanang sa mga news organization, unsa man ning report ni, unsa man ni si reporter Jessa oy nga
dili mo istorya
kanang di man ni siya nagtuga-tuga ni siya kadto dito niya, wa man ni siya kabalo sa ngalan sa bata, wa man ni siya kabalo sa eskwelahan. But they don't understand that we operate under policies, guidelines, and laws. So ang ending, ang na-blame na nun sa mga tao sa social media, ang kato na nung ni follow sa tinuod o insakto. Ang gihail as hero are those who violated actually the rights of the children, victims, and katong namusil. So murag diha attorney and ma'am, ang actually diha ang murag medyo naipit na sa kilid ang mainstream media ani kung unsaon na siya pag-navigate, because sa una man good, and ang mayon kag journalist, reporter ka, dapat trained ka, dapat nisulod ka ani with internet and digital technology. Napapas na siya tanan because it's the level of playing field. Anyone can be nanaganita yung gi-coin nga term nga citizen reporters, citizen journalism. But they are not trained, they're not schooled, they don't know tanan nga kinahanglan nimo nga careful na consideration. So diha siya ang conflict. Kung kita ni blur, pero ang content creator o kanang general public nga nag-monetize sa ilang page, wala. What does that leave us? How ano lang sa prinsipyo na to.
Ako makasabot yun ko, no? And in fact, kami naman po inana, we really encourage sa mga organizations like us nga nag-cater to children, nga kanang narin ni among kaugalingong internal policies in communications regarding children, unsaon po pag-handle, no? So makarelate ta gamay sa kana, pero maulagi maningkamot kag blur, maningkamot kag tabon, maningkamot kag anonymize sa bata. Pero everyone else on social media is doing it, and in fact I had to siguro post something, di ko tig-post o kanang kanang dili official, but then katong gi-identify na ang mga bata sa Tacloban nga kanang they were attacked as DBS man together with the pictures sa ilahang auntie etc. And I had to point out nga whether kanang kung di mo nila ganahan nila as DBS, pero ayaw lang po taon ipang share ang mga photos sa mga bata, no? bata pa man na, no? Sige lang na siya, kanang regardless sa inyong persons, but this is really a violation sa ato ang pag-respect unta sa katungod, kaya na maghihapon ay katungod ng mga bata. Bisag di pa kapareha o political nga pananaw, kanang magbantay ka, but then the others think it's okay. So, in that aspect siguro murag dako patag trabaho in terms of educating the public, kay everyone else is a content creator, no, kanang, so that means everyone else needs to be educated. Disheartening pud bitaw makakita ka sa mga comment nga mas okay sila sa violation kaysa pag-follow sa unsa-unta ang protection sa mga bata. So kana challenge na sa mga advocates like us, moning dili lang takapuyan sa kaning pag-educate. Siguro sa madugay madali, no, makasabot ra gyud siguro ang tanan. Let's be hopeful about that lang siguro nga we are just in a certain stage nga social media, we're experimenting, nag-experiment tas atong freedom of expression. Philippines is relatively a young country, no. How many years raman ta nga wala ta makolonize and experimenting on our own nationhood. So na-experiment kan siguro ta on the extent of the misinformation that we can make with the advent of social media. Sa una uso magyapon ng misinformation pero wa mo social media karon mudaghan and kani ang mas dali mas lisod na hinuon unya dili pa kita mature when it comes to this. So kami as a child advocate murag padayon lang ta, di lang po ta kapuyan kundi sila kapuyan og misinform og kaning attack sa mga bata, kay attack man gyud, no, anti-children man gyud, as if wa sila moagi pagkabata, no. Anti-children man gyud ang ubang mga sentiments and practices, and sometimes I'm thinking bullies man ta kanang easy to attack children, easy to abuse children. Di mo sila kabawas na to. Bisan pag mga salbahis ng mga bata, di mo nakabawas. And in that aspect siguro, there's a lot to learn para sa ato ang tanan, and kanimi social media handling of children. Taas pa gyud tag trabahoon.
Pero nindot siya nga kuan ba nga aside sa kaning makita nimo sa for me lang personally, because I monitor man sa mga news pages, there really are people who would kanang ila jud mo take jud sila time to educate and reply to comments. I see them, if mo click ko sa ilahang profile, they are educators, advocates, or even advocacy pages who would really take time to kanang sila na gyud ang niduol sa comment section sa news organizations, and it gives us hope nga naa pay mga tawo nga na daw i-ridicule gihapon sila, but that's still at least na yung mga efforts. And as attorney mentioned, padayon lang gyud bisan lisod to karon, no, sakit siya ra hunaon nga anong nga anita as a society, but mauna if we get inspiration, we take inspiration from those nga sige gyapon padayon nagyapoy energy bisag very tiring ang pag-correct sa dili maminaw. It's like yelling, talking to a wall. Okay, di man gid sila maminaw, pero siguro eventually we will reap the fruit of
eventually.
Hopefully.
Yeah, okay. So next question, attorney and Miss Jessa. Securing informed consent from both the child and their legal guardian is a cornerstone of the guide. However, in vulnerable or high-stakes environments like disaster zones or cases of domestic abuse, how can a journalist ensure that consent is truly informed and completely free of coercion?
Ikaw, Jude.
Ako yun.
Yes.
ang question kay how can a journalist?
Journalist.
Di man ko journalist. Although niagi kong stage. No, I was with the student publication, and then eventually I was with one of the newspapers here in Cebu. Pero nag-abogado naman ko, so wala lang siya. Asa ka nang suggest sa next time. Mag-abogado na po ni.
Puhon. Kuan, to be honest, medyo na caught off guard ko sa pag-rundown ni attorney ganina, and to think na human ako attend ani nga session nga there really are katong mga no gyud siya nga circumstances, absolutes nga mga non-negotiable for an interview nga mga circumstances, because there really are cases nga kaning disaster area or kining conflict area nga di ay siya pwedeng interviewhon. Siguro ang kanang uban nga maka-interview or even instances, I think I can recall mga instances nga may ani is ang nahitabo really was to especially if naana ang LGU, particularly ang Social Welfare and Development Office, you do not just as reporter, as content or media producers or content creators, we do not just barge in and interview kasi bata diri nga napangos, nadagma, naligsan sa katong nadamagan og tra. You coordinate, you ask for permission kay per policies kay as medyo taon na sa ko nag-cover og mga DSWD as a general beat reporter, before wala tong informed consent, murag coordinate lang ka karon naa na gyud siya actually, especially if the kaning affected community or kaning naay bata is already inside a camp. So kanang camp management, it's part of camp management sa DSWD nga naa siya slip nga mangayog yung ka literally og permission from the camp manager to interview, and then sila ang mo-assess kung kinsa ang ready nga bata nga ma-interview nimo. So what happened in the earthquake sa northern Cebu last October man to, no? September 30.
Yeah, September 30.
Pag kadtong on the day gyud kay kuan gabi man to pagkaugma ato or kadlawon gani lumba nang tag adto ang mga reporter naagyo yung mga nidiretso rag interview dito. I will not deny that. I will not deny that because I have colleagues yung mga badlungon gyud. And then but there are also those nga I know nga ask permission from DSWD, from Bugo City or sa barangay nga nag-shelter sa katong mga nga injured or sa mga dito sa Bugo hospital nga na in town pag inigma retrieve dito magid na i-account ang mga body bag mga ingana and naagi mananghid. So murag hopefully mananghid gyud ta og magpahibaw, but if strictly mo follow ta sa katong guidelines di gyud siya pwede interviewon. But mao naagi mga ingon niya na. So siguro if di gyud ma-help, especially if gi-pressure gyud ka sa imong editor, you coordinate and you ask permission. Dili lang sa troubled nga mama kay they're not in the right mindset. Mama, pwede ka na ma-interviewin, ma'am, karon ha? O sige. Pero wala na siyang mind. After na mahiubos na siya kay saning compromising kaayo di ay ang sitwasyon nila, but ni tando man ka sa pila ra man yung pag-ingon og uy I have it on video ni okay siya, but the right thing really to do is to coordinate with either the LGU or the social welfare office authority nga naa din na, but mo to attorney di na siya pwede.
Actually mo integrated magyud ni kanang we know it's experience over time kat-on man jud no aning pasayloon siguro nato ning mga bag-o kaayo nga mga reporters, but ang editor ato ang paninglan ana okay guidance man na siya, but over time makat-unan ra man gyud siya nya mga bag-o man gyud ni siya nga concepts pod like kanang consult the experts no katong mga previous cases kami nang react pod mi sa CLB nga nung in ato nga interview sa bata o sa mama no nga ipaistorya kung giunsa siya o abuso no nga di pwede mangutana sa ka sa social worker kung okay ra ba nang imuhang ipangutana kanang inana jud ka urgent mga masakripisyo na to everyone knows asa to ang silingan atong bata kahibaw na unsay gibuhat sa iyang uyuan maglakaw ng bata nga siguro ikadakuan na niya and the whole entire neighborhood nga kanang magtan-aw niya nga oy ginana din siya siyang parente no nga kana we should be sensitive mo nang as to matters of consent. Actually very informed consent explain niya magsugod gid pod sa ato kami kay we also do the interview man kana conscious pod mi nga bisag kami mismo nga conscious na dili mi maka-violate, and we ask each other actually those types of questions that I presented earlier. Kay practice man pud siya, mind works man pud siya, no, nga kanang eventually mobalik good nga, is this good for the child, is the story good for the child. Naman po tayo stories nga kanang ato yung gipakita ang naong sa mga bata, like katong bunso nga katong feature documentary, klaro jud kay mga naong sa mga bata nga kanang for 𝐒𝐄𝐈𝐒𝐃 at the time that it is exposed, but the story needs to be told that way, bakit-an jud para makasabtan sa mga sa publiko nga atong gi-advocate kinahanglan na i-separate nga justice system for mga bata. Mauni ang naong sa mga bata, mauni ang naong sa mga ginikanan nga kanang asa ni gadako ning mga bata, need to understand. Pero grabe na nga balancing, grabe na nga evaluation, and after everything, informed consent, kasabot sa atong gibuhat, ang atong kaistorya is nakasabot pod nganong kinahanglan sila mo istorya. In the same way siguro nga ako kung mag-explain ko sa ako ang witness, akong i-explain ang importance sa iyahang testimony, no, para sa iyahang kaugalingon mismo kay balo siya kung say impact sa story. So grabe ang grabe ang education and pag-educate pod sa uban, pag-relate sa imong story kanang ang mga bata nga among i-rescue, for example, rescued together with the SWD and the law enforcement, and ako kanang explainan gani namo nganong nahimo silang biktima in the first place. Usay di mo ba sila kasabot nga biktima dai sila, no?
Yes,
They really don't know nga biktima dai sila. Unya ni-explain nimo sa sexual abuse kay usay nagtuo sila nakaisa labi nag foreigner, no? Some of these children abi nila nga okay ra, no, because they just need the money, no, panginabuhi ra ni, and when you explain nga i-exploit etc. and realize mo nang mo istorya sila, inana siguro nga klase nga consent ang we need to get both from the children, kay dili na to kalimtan man ang mga bata, no, nga aside nga mananghid sa ginikanan, ang bata pod mismo istoryahon if okay ra ba niya.
Yes. Okay, thank you Miss Jessa and Attorney, no, mabalik jud ta sa katong 5 key principles. Number 5 nga handle stories with sensitivity, no, ang atong pagka-sensitibo gyud dapat naadyo na permi labi na kung mag-nata sa pag-interview. Okay, so we will take a quick break and we will be right with a few words from our partners.
Ang video na ito ay may sensitibong nilalaman na maaaring maging nakakabahala para sa mga manonood.
Sa bayan namin, ang mga bata ay sinisigurado naming ligtas. Sila ay inaalagaan, pinoprotektahan, at binabantayan.
Ang mga anak ko ay parang anak na rin nila. Ang mga anak nila ay parang anak ko rin. At habang naririto ako, ipinapangako kong walang masamang mangyayari sa kanila.
Bilang isang komunidad, iisa ang aming responsibilidad. Kaya naman, nagtutulungan kami at sama-samang pinoprotektahan ang bawat bata sa aming bayan.
Pero teka, bakit may parang kakaiba? Napasok ba ng 𝐒𝐄𝐈𝐒𝐃 ang barangay natin? Di pwede yan. Di dapat palampasin. Kahit duda pa lang, dapat i-report agad natin. Di tayo papayag na madagdagan pa ang mga biktima. Gagawin natin ang lahat para matiyak na ni isa sa ating mga anak walang mapapahamak.
Sa taong 2022, isa sa 100 batang Pilipino ay biktima ng pang-aabuso para lumikha at magbenta ng child sexual exploitation material. Madalas itong pinatawag na show, chat, cybersex o child porn. Mga tawag na hindi akma sa totoong nadadanap na pang-aabuso sa bata. Dahil ang totoong tawag dito ay online sexual abuse o exploitation of children o 𝐒𝐄𝐈𝐒𝐃. Ang pang-aabusong ito ay nagdudulot ng matinding trauma sa mga batang biktima.
Walang lugar dapat ang krimeng ito sa bansa natin. Kaya't samahan niyo kami at pagtulungan natin wakasan ito.
Di dapat ito usaping pampamilya lang. Dahil ang labang ito ay para sa kinabukasan ng ating lipunan.
Kahit pinakamaliit na senyales lang ang makita, i-report agad. Maaaring mga batang nagkukumpulan sa isang bahay, doble-dobleng koneksyon ng internet, pamilyang dati walang-wala, biglang magarbo ang pamumuhay, o pagbabago sa kilos ng bata gaya ng pagiging balisa, pagkakaroon ng takot sa ibang tao, laging natutulog, o maging ang pagkakaroon ng pasa o sugat na hindi maipaliwanag. Importante ang bawat detalye, kaya huwag matakot magsalita. Kung may duda, i-report ka agad. Mga otoridad na ang bahala.
Responsibilidad nating magsalita para sa kanila. Tayo ang boses ng isa't isa.
Dito sa bayan namin, tahimik, pero di kami tatahimik.
Di kami titigil. Sama-sama, pagtutulungan namin hanggang sa kahuli-hulihang bakas ng karahasan, tatanggalin at lilinisin namin.
Sama-sama nating wawakasan ng usaek hanggang sa kahit pinakamaliit na bahid, siguradong wala sa bayan namin. Ganito sa bayan namin. Sana sa inyo rin.
Bayan mo ng bahid ng usaek para sa isang bansang ligtas sa usaek. Iisang nasyon, iisang aksyon. Kung may kahina-hinalang kaso ng usaek sa inyong lugar, magsumbong o tumawag sa lokal na otoridad.
And we are back. Let's continue our discussion. The guide encourages media practitioners to report on the broader issues surrounding a case, like systemic failures, rather than exploiting individual personal circumstances to elicit shock or pity. What are the practical barriers journalists face when trying to pitch these deeper, systemic stories instead of the more sensationalized headlines? Ma'am Jessa?
Kuan. I think tanang nga reporter or kanang if you really are a kanang content creator nga into advocacy and education, would really want to feature kanang deeper aspect of a topic. However, kung mayong kag deeper, meaning mo entail mo good time.
Yes.
So the major consideration there would really the deadline on the output for the day. For example, gisugo ka for today kani mo dapat himuan og storya, and I don't think it's logistically possible to produce a special report in 3 hours nga makuha nimo ma-triangulate nimo ang tanang anggulo sa storya. So it would take mga 3 days, 5 days, ana. And then you have to produce man output for we work on very strict deadlines, and dapat by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock na nakay brief or summary nga ma-submit para ma-deliberate siya if it's worth publishing or ma-appeal sa lineup. So I would really say that the major challenge in producing mga specialized report and reports that they'll dig deeper into kining mga systemic na mga and policy na problema nga nag-entail og kanang more policy and advocacy is really the time element and the availability of the sources. Say for instance, you'd want to interview a certain expert or the regional director of DSWD or the DOJ or NBI, and then out of the country day siya or wala day siya din na. So daghan kay mga element, mostly it's time element good and deadline. Mao na ang major nga ni hinder, and then others really admittedly naagi dili interested ana because they'd rather cater to an audience nga mo consume og fast information, would kanang tickle the adrenaline or humor or whatever fancy that they have, which is unfortunate pero naagi mga mga organization, institution and content channels and kanang producers who would rather take on the shallow part rather than exposing kanang the deeper and more substantial aspect of an issue. Say for instance, nganong daghan nga traffic children ani nga community. So naay mga uban nga mo dig deeper into the unemployment or the kanang education level or literacy level of the parents, kay what sila kay baw sa ilang rights. So in result na ila pong anak more po itudlo gun sa ilang naibawaan. So instead of focusing on making the people understand and mas ma-broaden ilang horizon and mas mapalawman ilang understanding, especially sa trafficking, adto ta sa kanang makakugang nga headline nga daghang mo tan-aw, daghang mo, because it sells. And even if it's an advocacy, media production is also a business. So kailangan i-balance pud tingali sa uban na ilang hunahuna is the business aspect of it. And then really naagyud nga mga naghunahuna ra gyud og profit, clicks, engagement, kay online naman taron na kanang kuani mo abot ni dako kayo makakota gid ta sa atong SOCMED task for the week, for the month, if kani mo ato ang kuan, because let's face it, ang productivity sa ka company apil naman na ang social media engagement niya. So mao na basically. But if you are to consider kadtong mga gusto gyud mo himo substantial, it's really the deadline and time element.
Depende siguro sa kung ano ang kind of story. Kay for example kanang news kay elements timeliness, no?
Yes.
Shock value mo siguro ning ganahan sa uban nga kanang shocking gyud siya, mao ning kaning mga sexual abuses. Pila na ka bata ang naabuso nya, ipang-mention pa gyud ang mga pangan. Kanang dali ra man na sila ipang-produce, no?
Yes.
Dali ra na panghimuon nga mga stories, interview lang kagamay. Mao ning ang uban kay dali ra gyud interview o bata nga nakuan nga naabuso, no? Nya siguro the avoidance of these types na lang of kanang stories, if really ang pag-comply sa day-to-day, di man kinahanglan nga investigative journal the whole time, or himuan jud nimo kanang feature story gyud, no, nga kanang devotan gyud nimo og time. Pero when you're doing the news kato mga tidbits, ginagmay nga istorya, ginagmay nga stories, kanang siguro i-avoid lang to nato ang kanang sensationalizing. Ang gipangayo naman pud sa guideline nga ayaw i-sensationalize. Although na siya shock value gyud kanang ganahan kay ang mga tao, but kita siguro ang mo temper, being more responsible sa ato ang mga audience. So i-sacrifice na lang nato ato ang clicks, no, ato mga engagement. Unya kato sa 𝐒𝐄𝐈𝐒𝐃, kato mga absolute siguro nga kanang pwede ma-avoid, ato na lang siguro mo lang siguro to ato ang the minimum that you can do. The other shock values that you can create of your story, ayaw lang siguro sa mga bata, no? Ato na lang siguro sa lain mga kuan nga o ero nga putulog ulo naglakaw. O basta dyan ang mga tao ana, no? So kanang ang ipang-avoid lang gyud siguro nato tong mga absolutes nga naa diri nga ipang-avoid the minimum, no? Minimum na pwede nato mabuhat niya. Di naman to actually daghan. Dili kay to sila daghan. Ang daghan nato nga later on mga judgment calls nato kato kanang unsaon nga relevant to the entire kanang population of children ang imong story. Sige, devote na nato og time. Pero kato ma-avoid lang.
Avoid lang yun. Yes, thank you, Torny, and thank you, Miss Jessa. For our final question, ethical reporting isn't just about keeping children out of the news. It's also about letting them safely participate and express their views. As we look forward, what steps should media networks, universities, and self-regulatory bodies take to ensure that the next generation of practitioners views this guide not as a restriction but as a framework for powerful, respectful storytelling?
Murag, actually mo tong last parts ako ang presentation ganyan mga collaborative efforts with the schools, matrain na to daan ang mga communication students nato, even high school pa no, kanang na naman tayo mga high school journalists. Pwede siguro sugdan na kaning mga high school journalists naman ni mga potentials. Siguro atong sugdan bisag diha no, kanang start our children young and siguro temper ourselves with the use of social media kanang siguro kung ganahan ta mamadlong sa atong mga anak kita pod may siguro mamadlong sa atong kaugalingon regarding the use no kay manaway tas mga bata ang mga badlongon putro pud di ay ta so it goes kanang all the way back sa daghan nagkalain-lain nga institutions, the family, siguro tudluan na to the parents no pwede tudluan na to ang mga parents, mga minimum lang siguro nga requirements sa pagkanang expose sa stories kay like no, atong discussion ato during that time kay parents who will kanang mga GoFundMe nga kanang activities sa mga parents for their children who are sick with this, sick with that, will you stop that? Kanang the question that you ask yourself kanang you're earning from the stories that you make from your children, should you stop that? Values na po na niya, balancing na po na, but I need the money. No, kanang, and ako, I personally don't want to be judgmental sa mga parents nga in dire situation, no? But kana mga balancing, balik siguro ta sa atong kaugalingon at katong mga forum, different venues for educating everyone like kita sa CWC natay plano to reach out to media and the vloggers on this no kaning media guides nato. So a lot of other venues siguro nga pwede nato nga sugdan na dili necessary nga nakahimo na og story nga diha pa ta mo ingogoy sayop na no so training.
So aside siguro from kanang training and newsroom policies, really is to look after each other, look out for each other. Say for instance, you have for those who are into the industry like campus journalist ka or naana ka sa professional nga industry, if the situation really calls for it, you call out privately, and then if di jud siya mada, publicly call out those who are deliberately violating. I think this is the first time that I will make a public admission, but I report pages and kanang mga news pages and even kanang individual pages of colleagues, and some really know that I would really report that kaya after na ko mo chat nila or suit nila in person, if dismissive sila mo i-report yun na ko sila because the digital platforms can really do so much. Yes na ay mga gender na ay mga blanket nga mga policies, but really if there are daghan ang mo report, and then it's syempre reasonable pa din mong pag-report nga graphic ra kaayo, compromising sa children or even sa kanang mga victims of adults who are victims of kanang mga circumstances, call out and report yun kay if magsige ra tag-ampo nga magbag-o sila di barag I belong to a religious family but kinahanglan sa gyud ka mo action. Yes. You don't have to be the bad guy, but kanang you have to do what you have to do. I-report siya, simply report lang, and then naman ang criteria sa, say for instance sa Meta or sa Facebook, if mo gina ang pinakasikat na to din is Pilipinas nga dinhagid usually ang avenue for online abuse, i-report siya. So if it's nudity, if it's sexualization of the child, if it entails harm or violence, pwede ra gid nimo siya i-report para aware ang tao kay kaning ko sa Bisaya pa matagam siya ba kay kung imo mo siyang sultian nga kanang murag naka-break siya sa luwas santos ra pud kay kawi kinahanglan tagkuan kaya ni we adjud na ingan ni dili uy kay kuan what if imo nang anak di uy sus wadan suya lang gyud ka kay viral ni trending ni daghan among follower ni grow 100,000 among follower because of that,
What kind of follower is that?
mga blind followers.
No, kanang ning daghan sila kay inana ang
Daghan
klase
di ay
sa
pud sila.
So you take pride
consider
in
that alarming.
you take pride in leading something indecent or
Yeah.
something immoral and illegal gani at times sometimes. So murag if di gid na nimo sila matala og storya, then I urge you to report, encourage you to report.
Yes.
Kay it will make a difference kay I've over the years mo feedback man na siya, maingon man na si Meta nga kanang we
yes.
took down the kuan because soon siya sa there are also frustrating reports nga feeling gid nako ni violate na gid siya. But moingon si Meta nga
okay
did not
lang.
go against our standard. Parang, oh no, but for me ni go siya against. Pero sige lang, padayon lang kita sa pag-report. Ma-take down na ra gid siya because if we don't do anything, mag-assume si platforms, for example si Meta nga, okay ra kay
Wala may
siya.
report.
Daghang gini-like, daghang giniha. So okay ra day siya. So as much as citizen and dili lang as media producer, as media practitioner or advocate bata, kanang it's also a responsibility as a citizen of the digital world ba nga to help make it kanang a safe environment for our children. So,
Yeah.
report.
Yeah, report.
Yes, and kuan bud ma'am Jess no kanang kung mo report ka dili man pud mahibalan, dili mo notify niya nga report ka ni Zea. Dili naman no. So di
Pero
naman
gidudahan na ni siya ron sa iyang mga colleagues.
Actually, kabaw
Si
sila.
Jessa gito.
si Jason
Kabaw kina sila. Ngayon ko, pagtanong sa imong post kay report ka na ako.
Actually, I call out yun. Kanang na ako yung mga friends nga mo go against my standards. Ako man dyan ingnan nga, actually violation ni sa kanang law yun, no? Ako pag yung citan on sa ilang violation, please take it down kay kanang you will be liable for that. Warning na siya. No?
Kung dili maminaw.
Because may uban attorney mo ingon na, I didn't know, okay, I will take it down. Ganang innocent lang mga nag-post it because everybody's doing it. Nahimo na nun siyang kultura ka. Okay na dito joke about nga circumstance a child.
Actually, ang example, kay diba, suko magkakitag mga CICL. Paborito man na to kasukan ng mga CICL, na children in conflict with the law. Nga, kaning mga video kaning mga CCTV nga maka-capture ani mga bata nga mo cut sa mga balay, mangawat sa mga balay, klaro kay mga now and then ipang share. Dili na siya pwede.
I-screenshot pa ani i-zoom.
I-screenshot, i-zoom, i-klaro jud no, pagbantay ani mga bataan, no. Kanang mga kawatan ni, no. Actually, naging ko yung mga Facebook friends who were doing that, probably thinking they're doing the public service. So I have to call them out nga it's actually violation sa kanang balaod na to, Republic Act 9344. If you really want to alarm the public, no, kanang i-report ato sa police kay para kanang mga bata mahatagan og sakto nga intervention, no, rather than i-public humiliation nato daan kay ino nato nga preventive measure ni, but then it's really the future. You are dooming the child when you do that. Uy, simba ko mahimo pa intaw ng congressman niya, mo siya ay kawatan naman ko sa una, kawatan na ako, okay na niya, kawatan na ko forever, postlandman, and words do matter, no, when it comes to children.
Okay. So as we draw this 2-hour session to a close, let's remember our biggest takeaway today. A headline lasts for a day, but the impact of irresponsible reporting can alter a child's life forever. Let us choose to be storytellers who protect and empower. And at this point, may I invite our resource persons to give a brief closing takeaway for our viewers. So, attorney, ikaw sa first.
Okay. We are talking about developing and producing content on social media, making news, but we want to create stories that actually promote the rights of the child, that will respect the rights of the child, protect them from all forms of harm and danger, no. We want to do this by ensuring the utmost consideration and sensitivity to children's vulnerability and special needs, no. Mga bata pa in taon ni dili mo kaedad, and we must understand nga they are in a special situation. We want stories that will empower these children now or in the future, and we must be sensitive as to doing that. So in so doing, you must remember that in considering the rights of the child, we must observe the basics, no, of this protection. Like, pinaka-basic lang, consent from the parent, consent from the mother, from the father, or from the child himself or herself, no? Respect the agency of the child, no? We want to empower, we want them to exercise this, we want them to become responsible citizens, and probably we can guide them by ourselves respecting this. And of course, the other one is the child's assent, time sensitivity. Atong discussion ganina is there may be some violations or there may be things nga impractical kay time bound all the time, no? Kinahanglan alas 2 sa una kami, alas 2 na mo ang story para ma-report for that day, para kaabot sa deadline. But still, ang welfare sa bata, ang katungod sa bata should not be sacrificed because of the deadlines that we are trying to meet. So siguro katong akong gingon ganina na may mga absolutes ato lang to observe, di makaayo to daghan bisag kana lang una. So kana lang siya.
Okay.
So for my part, as speaking on behalf of the reporters and the media producers and content producers, siguro before publishing something, especially if in social media or mag-live ka, mag-discuss ka about it, you pause and ask yourself, if ako ang naa sa part sa immediate family, or ako mismo ang receiving end of the abuse or the crime or the violence, will I feel okay or will I feel bad? More than meeting the mandate of telling the people or telling the story, ang uban mo invoke man gid na, I have to do this because the people they have the right to know. I have a duty to inform the people about this. But will this only create more chaos, more culture of abuse, culture of violence and hatred? And will this, instead of reforming for example, the life of an erring child or a CICL for that matter, makatabang ba ko nga mabalik siya sa community, ma-reintegrate siya sa community after the intervention, or ako ang ni-nail sa final, ako ang ning-duk-duk sa last gyud nga straw nga di na gyud ni siya mabalik, kay panindigan na gyud niya yung pagkakriminal, panindigan na gyud niya nga broken na siya, kanang-dili na siya pure, so wala na siya ibili. I just hope that we carry that responsibility, that as storytellers, we also have to shape a community that is anchored on hope, on change, on reformation, and kanang rehabilitation. If medyo kuan yun nagibalaod nga gilapas and medyo bugat gid yung gihimo, but that's back on the idea that as storytellers we will help build a better future for these unfortunate children who were in the receiving end of violence, or who unfortunately sila ang nihimo sa error because or sa sala because wala sila na guide sa ilahang immediate nga family or community. So at the end of the day, yes, we are storytellers, but we should also ask ourselves, is my story worth listening to, or will this make a better and brighter days for these children nga naa sa dapat wala sila ani nga sitwasyon pero naa sila ana. So let us be the agent of kanang hope and positive change for these children na involved ani either end ani niya nga sitwasyon.
Okay, all right. On behalf of the Interagency Council Against Trafficking 7, Violence Against Women and Their Children, and all our partners, I extend our deepest gratitude to our exceptional panel and to every single advocate who tuned in today. To our viewers, thank you for joining us. Please Fill out the evaluation form on the screen to claim your certificate of participation. For those who wish to obtain a digital copy of the guide for media practitioners on the reporting and coverage of children, you may download it directly from the official website of the DSWD and the Council for the Welfare of Children, or CWC. The links are also provided in the description box of this episode. So, Attorney o Ma'am Jessa, basta namin gustong i-shout out.
Shout out sa mga taga CLB, no?
Shout
nga nagtanaw
out.
karon, and to everyone else nga kanang ganahan mo hatag og better future for our children. O dili lang ta mawalaan og paglaom always.
Yes.
On my part, I'd like to also say hi to my colleagues in Cebu Federation of Beat Journalists. I hope we become partners for this certain, this particular advocacy. And sa mga campus journalists din that I mentor and I will be mentoring, please take note of the discussions that we had and the future discussions that under this webinar series. And let's make a better future for the children.
Okay, so once again, this is your host, thanking you and honoring your tireless service for the safety, dignity, and future of every Filipino child. Remember, in MAKABATA series, every child matters and every step is taken with care.